Ladies and gentlemen, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to a presentation by Dr.Ali on the natural resources of Somalia. As an oil and mining expert who has been working in the field of natural resources, today I want to give you lectures and presentations on the potential of making Somalia a big nation exporting natural resources. First and foremost, to begin with, Somalia has a number of mineral and oil and gas resources that has never been explored. Somalia's mineral potential was not adequately explored nor surveyed properly since colonial and post-independent time. The country remains to be one of the final frontiers that will offer opportunities and surprises to companies that venture into it. At present, an almost insatiable hunger exists for commodities, especially mineral resources. As the demand and price of producing deposits dwindle globally, the global commodity sector is seeking new frontiers from which to satisfy its demand. Somalia is a new frontier area not adequately explored that's ready to reveal its secrets of oil, gas, uranium, platinum, rare earth metals, gold, copper, iron, manganese, tin, gemstone, and other natural resources, especially minerals like CCM. Today, I will go into two sectors. One sector will be the mineral resources. In this lecture, it will be an overview of what the potential of these resources are. In Somalia, especially in Puntland area of Somalia, we have discovered deposits which are commercially viable for tin and salt. These two resources, if explored properly and exploited properly, can generate revenues not only for the governments of Puntland and Somalia, but also for investors who want to invest in these sectors, which are in demand, in high demand globally. How was the exploration seen in Somalia? From the colonial times of 1960 to 1991, there's been a number of explorations, mainly oil and gas. In around 1950-56, Rogers and Sinclair came to Somalia, and then they drilled the first wells up to 1967 when they left Somalia. Along those areas, that Somalia had from 1956 up to 1991, close to 65 oil wells were drilled, and unfortunately, some of these wells were not well allocated, and we will go into the details of why these things have been misallocated. Was it the geopolitical factors involved, or was it the technical mismanagement of the exploration scene? Before we come into that, today I will just go over what happened in the oil sector in Somalia. From 1956 to 1991, 65 wells were drilled in Somalia. Out of those 65 wells, close to 7 or 8 wells had good potential for both gas and oil, but nothing has been done much about it. Major factors involved were, of course, technical negligence, that's what I will call, on the part of the Somali engineers and, of course, on the international oil exploration companies, which did not want to do more work in Somalia because at that time oil prices were extremely too low. But in today's world, considering the last few years, a lot of big oil companies have not been doing proper reserve replacement ratios. And what has been happening is, as a percentage of revenues generated, the exploration budgets of major oil companies have been dwindling. Let's come to the oil and gas sector per se. In the oil and gas sector, companies are divided into three sections. I should call one the junior companies, which normally uh, capitalized between 50 to, say, presumably around $400 million. These companies are very agile and they can come to any jurisdictions globally, especially in remote and risky countries, and do a lot of oil explorations. And then we have the what we call independents, or the mid-tier companies, which do most production, which they normally buy from junior companies as takeovers. And then what happens is, because of the capital expenditures involved in, especially in the offshore sector, which runs to hundreds of millions of dollars, we are drilling presumably a couple of wells, each well costing close to 78 million up to $100 million. A lot of the middle, or what we call mid-tier companies, or what we call it the independents, would always prefer venturing and partnering with the major oil companies. So the major oil companies ultimately are the ones who produce most oil in the world. And these major oil companies, ExxonMobil, Chevron, Sunuk, PetroChina, BP, Shell, all these companies have not been replacing their reserves that they have been depleting. And if you look in the next few years, the global demand is going to increase while the global expenditure on oil exploration has been dwindling. The effect this will have is a spike on oil prices. Apart from that, there's a lot of debate on the effect of EV, or what they call the electrification of transportation, will have on oil demand. Of course, a lot of people are talking about going beyond oil. In other words, a lot of countries are advocating for for phasing out all these what we call fossil fuel dependent transportation systems. But can it be done in time in regards to competitiveness in the marketplace? I think not for the time being, especially in what we call the power sector, which currently has a lot of power being produced by gas fired and coal fired power stations. The renewable sector, energy sector, is getting more efficient and getting cheaper when you look at the levelized cost of energy vis-a-vis the fuel, and in the near future, the biggest problem with the intermittent types of solar and wind is they are not available most of the time, and battery storage is extremely high. So with the reduction of presumably battery storage, there may be a possibility of making sure that a lot of power is produced using renewable energy. But it's intermittent. It's not something that can be relied on 100%. Okay, let's come to what are the prospects of oil and gas mining, especially in Puntland of Somalia, which is more stable than the rest of Somalia. What has happened in the last few, say, 20 years in Puntland? Since the Somali government collapsed in 1991, the only place which had any resemblance of order was in Puntland. And in Puntland in 2012, they drilled two oil wells, the Shabelle 1 and the Shabelle 2, which I fully disagreed on their locations, because not only were the seismics which were done very shallow, in other words, not much, but also that the the companies which were drilling for this oil and gas, their target was to look at the Daror Valley. They were doing more or less a basin analysis of what prospects of the Daror Basin is, which a state government should have really audited their operations, because we could not afford having one well drilled at the wrong place. And I think this is the current challenge which we are going to face with what we're hearing, the offshore drilling, which is going to happen soon in parts of Galmudug and Hirshabelle in southern Somalia. It's going to be very difficult. And with an offshore oil rig costing almost 10 times more expensive than what it is on land, you're looking at almost between 70 to 100 million dollars for one offshore well drilling, which may take between 30 to 90 days, depending on how deep you're going to drill. The challenge is if these wells are going to be misallocated, because I think they may be misallocated, because the seismic which was done by Soma Oil and Gas was done in a very hurried process, and it was done at high tide, especially during June, July seasons, which I presume that the data, the 2D data they're going to work on may be not highly reliable. But let's see what comes out. And let's not jump the gun. And I presume that before they drill, they should do a closed 3D seismic before drilling one well, because drilling one well is going to be very expensive. And not only is it going to be expensive, if we miss a target, and we know offshore Somalia has a lot of oil and gas potential, then the province may be considered as a non-starter, which geopolitically and economically will be disaster for the oil and gas sector of Somalia. This is a caution from an expert who has been in the industry for very many years. And I think that the teams, or the multi-skilled teams which will be looking into this, must be very, very cautious and careful on how they're going to go around locating such types of oil wells. Thank you very much today. This is a brief from Dr.Ali Abdullahi, an oil and gas mining expert. In our next presentation, I will be talking about the mining potential, especially mineral resources of Puntland, which is in northern Somalia. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to AMSA's consulting presentation on the mining oil and gas potential of Somalia, which has not been explored, discovered, exploited. And how are we going to do this? We can do it. We do not have to rely on international oil and gas companies, mining companies, doing this work for us. We as Somalis, we as Puntlanders, we have the technical know-how, the expertise, the knowledge, and of course, the capital which our people have, that we can raise a company that can do these operations. This company can take into joint venture with the government, and the government can be a starter in making sure that we produce our natural resources using our knowledge and our capital resources. Thank you very much for listening to our presentation. This is Dr. Ali Abdullahi of AMSA's Consulting. Thank you very much.